Chris, we're live. Tom, we're live.
Woo! Yay!
Mr.
It's good to be
Eliot,
alive.
Mr. Bowie,
It's good to be
Miss
live.
Pamela. We are live on Verse and Vibe. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. Hi, everyone out there in internet land. We're going to wait a few minutes and give you all a chance to join in. And if you want to share the broadcast and start your watch party, this is the great time to do that. So we're all going to take a moment really quick to do that now. Again, if you're just tuning in, welcome to T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, through the prism of David Bowie, with my special guests, Spor, Todd Smith, poet, and Pamela Gerstein, BISS list, and just bright, bubbly, all-around personality. Tom Freund of Tom Freund Music, down, and Chris Littlefield from the Carl Denson Tiny Universe Band, as well as many other musical endeavors. We are so glad to have all of you here today on Verse and Vibe. We're trying something new. We're all going to narrate and read this epic poem together, and then we're going to alternate in different musicians. So we're reading an epic poem in an epic way. As always, I'm giving you our technology internet disclaimer. So we will present the best art to you. What the internet decides to present to you is not on us. Hi, everyone. How you doing today? We're just going to give everyone a chance to join in. But in the meantime, how are you? What's going on over there, people?
Good.
Nice
Right.
background, Chris.
Oh, thanks for that, Rachel. Yeah, just trying to do my part. Represent on behalf of these two great artists.
Yeah, no, I like the Picasso of Eliot. That's awesome.
I know. Well, you guys came up with that background, so
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I couldn't find it online, so I had to grab it from the Facebook post.
You know what's interesting, really quick about that is Bowie's known quite a bit for his fashion and his forward weirdness about that and his image. But so was Eliot, and he was kind of a rock star at the time once this poem really hit, and he was known for wearing some really, really kind of outrageous clothing and running around.
Oh yeah. Well, the photos I saw online, the guy's really dapper.
Yeah.
Very
Love
dapper.
that word. I think that's
Right.
missing from the men of
Dapper.
today. Is
Dapper.
the dapper is the
Let's
is the
bring it back.
dapperness of the
Bring it
20s.
back.
Let's
Hey.
bring it back.
Dapper Spor.
Look at this dapper right here.
I know.
This
Except for
guy.
Spor.
This guy.
This guy.
Hold on, I'm just getting ready to share this to my page, so this way my mom is able to watch it. I keep making fun of her every episode that if I don't put it on my page, she can't figure out how to find it. So, Mom, I'm doing this for you.
Hi, Mom.
If Spor's mom is working, hello, good job. Your son is an incredible human being that we love very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Aww.
And who's very inspiring. So hold on, let's go live, shall we? Oh, we are live. Yeah, so I love the beginning of the episode where it's kind of just free flowing and we're just kind of waiting for people to tune in. So again, if you're just tuning in, welcome to Verse and Vibe. And we're here celebrating some incredible creativity today, not just amongst all of us and my special guests, but David Bowie and T.S. Eliot, who, for those of you that don't know, have so much in common that we're going to get to talk a little bit about. Even Bowie fans who know some of his influences don't realize how much of it came from literature. And that's kind of how this whole episode came to be, is I was reading an article one day that started talking about how he was influenced by these incredible poets, T.S. Eliot just being one of them. And then what's really interesting about this particular epic poem is it was written while T.S. Eliot was recovering from the Spanish flu, which his wife and T.S. Eliot both picked up during 1918 during the pandemic. So he kind of wrote this post-pandemic about this world that was very dark, but kind of little bits of hope, and brought in all sorts of pieces of his life and his travels and things like that, which we'll dive into in a little bit. But so I just thought it was really relevant because of what we're all going through right now in our lives. I thought this was the perfect opportunity to, read The Wasteland.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let me just hit live now on this post. And then, Spor, why don't we dive kind of right into a little bit of background about
The poem,
Yeah, about the poem. And as I was talking about how he wrote this while he was recovering from the Spanish flu.
Indeed. Yeah, T.S. Eliot had his first wife was named Vivian, and they did contract the flu in London. And Eliot he was an American, so he was he was an expat that had moved to London at the end of the war, and World War I destroyed these grand American European cities, and on top of that, a pandemic swept up into Paris, London, Amsterdam, and it was very, very devastating. And so, yes, Bowie and Vivian caught the pandemic, but they also suffered from what would be called clinical depression. They both had terrible insomnia. And so by 1920, 21, everything was really strained. Eliot had a job that they actually gave him a medical leave for 3 months for exhaustion, as they called it back then. And so he literally left, that job, London, and his wife. He left his wife, and that's when he went to this weird little seaside kind of Club Med for people like him, because he was already a celebrity. And 50 day, every day he would ride out to the seaside from the resort and throw out 50 lines of the poem. And he was still he had insomnia. He hadn't been really diagnosed yet, but he got about halfway through the poem, then jumped on a train and got put into a sanitarium in Lausanne in Switzerland. And that's where he wrote the second half of the poem. And by then he was just fragmented, beaten down from the pandemic, his job, his wife, and then he had this depression and all the devastation around him. And that was kind of the giant, handful of ingredients to throw into the cauldron and give it a giant stir. And then out came the wasteland.
Yes, and speaking of coming out of the wasteland, it's so nice to see that things are opening again. And I saw some of my friends last night for the first time in, like 3 months for a socially distant birthday party, which was fun but weird, and live music. And it was really incredible to have live music. And the musicians even were like, oh my God, we forgot what it was like to play in front of people or instead of our phones. So hopefully as we're all getting safe, we'll find a new way to stay connected. So that's really exciting. Speaking of connected, Tom, Chris, I'd love to hear a little bit about your connection to Bowie and how he's either influenced you or what you remember about your first Bowie album. So Tom, we'll start with you. Tell me a little bit about your Bowie influence.
Chris or Tom?
Tom, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I had to change it to the computer. The phone was not working. Okay.
No worries. You're
here
with
we
us
go.
now.
David Bowie has always been a prominent force in my life. I've always been slightly terrified of him too, to try to cover his music, because he's so brilliant and great. The first time I got to see him, I was about 10 years old, and someone invited me to Saturday Night Live, a live broadcast in New York City, and it was the era where he had the little electronic dog with the barking, the glowing eyes, and he was wearing a skirt and an opera outfit, and it was awesome. It blew my mind. It was so appropriate as a 10-year-old, and now it's more than ever.
Explains a lot, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, you can look it up. You can look up the connections.
No, I meant you.
Yeah, exactly. Just look me up.
And Chris, what about you?
My experience with Bowie is a little different. I mean, some of it's like comes from two different bookends, from like when I was younger, say like in the 70s, and hearing him on the radio. But I was listening to a lot more, I would say mostly black music, at that point in time, like jazz, funk, not so much rock. But Bowie is one of those things that's like throughout, before my musical career and during my musical career until now, and even when he died, it's like he's been this punctuation. And I've seen him come up, in various different points, in my musical experience, So I wouldn't say I was always a big Bowie fan, but I was always enamored of his creativity, his I guess meshing art and music, and then his like artistic developmental arc throughout his career. So, for me, I've had a chance to play some of his stuff. I've never seen him live. I've definitely seen, in the age of the internet, seen a lot of this stuff online. In the Tiny Universe, we've covered a bunch of his tunes. Like, we did Space Oddity, and in my band, Close Circuit, we did electronic version of Fame. And like I said before, before we started the broadcast, it's like my impression of Bowie. He's funky, Golden Years. I mean, that's a seriously funky tune, and the guy is like just amazing and prolific, and he's just been this sort of growing element, out there for me, and like in my background and collection with a whole bunch of other.
And jumped on a train and got put into a sanitarium, and
so yeah, and the guy is Bowie is like, he's kind of beyond words. And so I the only regret I have about David Bowie is I had a chance to go see him and I missed it. He played at Jazz Fest like 3 years before he passed. Something like that. And then I think we were leaving on that day, so I didn't get a chance to go see him. And then it was like 3 years later, we were getting off the boat from Jam Cruise, and the day we got off the boat, found out that he had just died.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I think the rest of that tour we got into with the Tiny Universe, everybody was just listening to Bowie that whole day, interviews and albums. And then I went to a friend's house the following weekend, and we were listening to Black Star. In the end, and I literally had just lived with that album for like a whole week. It was so amazing, because it was like this amazing insight as to a person who sees, the inevitable, the end that's coming, and he's writing this, anticipating that, and you really got the feeling about that.
Wow. Yeah, he was staring into the void.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of staring into the void, Spor, there's a blind seer who has the role of a speaker in the Wasteland. And before we dive into performing it, maybe you could tell us the story behind that.
Yeah, one of the things that Eliot does in this poem, the poem to me is, I call it like a mosaic of fracture. He literally lifts and pulls and breaks lines out of ancient and modern texts, just drops them in the poem. And sometimes he changes them a little bit, but the idea is he wanted multiple speakers in the poem as he tells these different stories and angles, because essentially he's seeing the wasteland that he lives in, and it needs healing. It needs to come back together. That's why there's all the water references in the poem, and it's all about the drought and the dry, cracked land. Tiresias, he goes back to the Greek epics of Homer. So he's both in the Odyssey and the Iliad. But he's a big part of the mythology, because he's always under the eye of the gods, and he's kind of one of those pawns that gets moved around, and he's in favor of one god, and like Zeus, and then Hera gets jealous and does something terrible, takes away his eyesight, so he's blind. But Zeus gives him the power of prophecy, so he's blind, but he can see the future. So that was that trade-off. At one point, because he accidentally saw Athena bathing, and you're not supposed to look at the gods, that was the first time he was blinded. But once he got fixed and became the seer, that's when he was turned into a woman. And then he was turned back into a man the second half of his life. So there's these weird references where he's speaking and he's talking about, well, you guys have it hard. Look what I've been through. And he talked about, old man with wrinkled female breasts. And, it's this really, really kind of disturbing sort of like self-image he has. But he is a device in the poem so that he can look through time. Remember, he's a prophet. So he's literally looking through and stepping in and telling the story at different parts. And believe me, you'll know when it's him, because he loves to announce himself. And I like to use an old man's voice once in a while. That's Tiresias. So yeah, he is one of the guides, just like you've got the Fisher King from the King Arthur thing. And that was about, if you guys ever watch Excalibur or any of the the King Arthur tales, same sort of story that happens in the wasteland, where you've got this great kingdom. It's all united and everything's gleaming gold. It's Camelot. And then everything starts withering and dying. And it's very symbolic. But King Arthur throws his knights out and says, you need to find this grail, this blood of Christ, and it will bring fertility and water back to the land, and everyone can live, because we all need the water. And so that's why you have him reach Eliot, that is reaching back and grabbing these different voices and speakers to convey a historical reference point that these are cycles, that things rise and fall. and things have just fallen. It's after World War I. Eliot is trying to engineer or prescribe a literary fix. That's what this is. 433.
And it's a beautiful fix, and we're going to dive right into performing it in a really unique way. I'm so excited to be a part of this fantastic ensemble. It's the first ensemble cast for Verse and Vibes, so it's very exciting. And one of the things we like to do before we get into the performance is just gather together and take a moment of gratitude for everyone that's been working so hard to support all of the rest of us during this incredibly interesting time in human history. So to the nurses and the doctors and the healthcare workers and the truck drivers and everyone who has gone out of their way and put themselves at risk, we're just going to take a moment to build this big, beautiful light inside of ourselves. And as we build it and build it and build it together, we're going to imagine that we're beaming it out far and wide, enveloping the entire world. Forget it, enveloping the entire universe with love and light and compassion and togetherness. And think of it as a big energetic hug for the planet, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I know I could sure use a big energetic hug.
Amen, sister.
Yes, y'all. Yes, indeed.
And without further ado, we present to you The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot through the prism of David Bowie. We hope you enjoy.
Part 3, The Fire Sermon.
The river's tent is broken. The last fingers of leaf clutch and sink into the wet bank. The wind crosses the brown land, unheard. The nymphs are departed. Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. The river bears no empty bottles, sandwich papers, silk handkerchiefs, cardboard boxes, cigarette ends, or other testimony summer nights. The nymphs are departed, and their friends, loitering heirs of city directors, departed, have left no addresses. By the waters of Liman I sat down and wept.
Sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. Sweet Thames, for I speak not loud or long, but back at my back a cold blast I hear, the rattle of bones and chuckle spread from ear to ear.
A rat crept softly through the vegetation, dragging its slimy belly on the bank, while I was fishing in the dull canal on a winter evening round behind the gas house, musing upon the king, my brother's wreck, and on the king, my father's death before him. White bodies naked on the low, damp ground, and bones cast in a little dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only, year to year.
But at my back, from time to time, I hear the sound of horns and motors, which shall bring Sweeney to Mrs. Porter in the spring.
Oh, the moon shone bright on Mrs. Porter and on her daughter. They washed their feet in soda water. Oh, et ces voix d'enfants chantant dans sa coupole.
Twit, twit, twit. Jug, 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 jug. So rudely forced. Terror.
Unreal City, under the brown fog of a winter noon, Mr. Eugenides, the Smyrna merchant, unshaven, with a pocket full of currants. CIF London, documents at sight, asked me in demotic French to luncheon at the Cannon Street Hotel, followed by a weekend at the Metropole.
At the violet hour, when the eyes and back turn upward from the desk, when the human engine waits like a taxi, throbbing, waiting.
I, Tiresias, though blind, throbbing between two lives, old man with wrinkled female breasts, can see at the violet hour, the evening hour, that strives homeward and brings the sailor home from sea, the typist home at tea time, clears her breakfast, lights her stove, and lays out food in tins.
Out of the window, perilously spread, her drying combinations touched by the sun's last rays. On the divan are piled, at night her bed, stockings, slippers, camisoles, and stays.
I, Tiresias, old man with wrinkled dugs, perceived the scene and foretold the rest. I, too, awaited the unexpected guest. He, the young man, careful. He, the young man carbuncular, arrives, a small house agent's clerk, with one bold stare, one of the low on whom assurance sits, as a silk hat on a Bradford millionaire.
The time is now propitious, as he guesses. The meal is ended. She is bored and tired. Endeavors to engage her in caresses, which are unreproved if undesired.
Flushed and decided, he assaults at once, exploring hands encountered no defense.
His vanity requires no response and makes a welcome of indifference.
And I, Tiresias, have forsuffered all, enacted on the same divan or bed. I, who have sat by thieves below the wall and walked amongst the lowest of the dead.
Bestows one final patronizing kiss and gropes his way, finding the stairs unlit.
She turns and looks a moment in the glass, hardly aware of her departed lover. Her brain allows one half-formed thought to pass.
Well, now that's done. I'm glad it's over.
When lovely woman stoops to folly and paces about her room again, alone,
She smooths her hair with an automatic hand and puts a record on the gramophone.
The music crept by me upon the waters.
and along the Strand, up Queen Victoria Street. Oh, city, city, I can sometimes hear, beside a public bar in Lower Thames Street, the pleasant whining of a mandolin. And the clatter and the chatter from within, where fishmen lounge at noon, where the walls of Magnus Martyr hold inexplicable splendor of Ionian white and gold.
The river sweats, oil and tar. The barges drift with the turning tide. Red sails, wide. To leeward swing on the heavy spar. The barges wash, drifting logs. Down Greenwich Reach, past the Isle of Dogs. Why a la la, la la. Why a la la, la la, la la.
Elizabeth and Leicester, beating oars, the stern was formed, a gilded shell, red and gold.
The brisk Soel rippled both shores. Southwest wind carried downstream the peal of bells, white towers.
Why, alala, Leia. Walala, Leia, lala.
Trams and dusty trees, Highbury bore me. Richmond and Kew undid me. By Richmond I raised my knees, supine on the floor of a narrow canoe.
My feet. My feet are at Moorgate, and my heart under my feet. After the event, he wept. He promised a new start, and I made no comment. What should I resent?
On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing. The broken fingernails, dirty hands, my people, humble people who expect nothing.
La la.
To Carthage then I came, burning, 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 burning. O Lord, thou pluckest me out. O Lord, thou pluckest, burning.
Part 4, Death by Water.
Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, forgot the cry of gulls and the deep sea swell, and the profit and loss.
A current under sea picked his bones in whispers as he rose and fell. He passed the stages of his age and youth, entering the whirlpool.
Gentile or Jew, O you, who turn the wheel and look to windward, consider Phlebas, who was once handsome and as tall as you.
Part 5, What the Thunder Said.
After the torchlight red on sweaty faces, after the frosty silence in the gardens, after the agony in stony places, the shouting and the crying. Prison and place and reverberation of thunder of spring over distant mountains. He who was living is now dead. We who are living are now dying. With a little patience.
Here is no water, but only rock. Rock and no water, and the sandy road. The road winding above among the mountains, which are mountains of rock without water.
If there were water, we should stop and drink. Amongst the rock, one cannot stop or think. Sweat is dry and feet are in the sand. If there were only water amongst the rock.
Dead mountain mouth, carious teeth that cannot spit. Here one can neither stand nor sit. There's not even silence in the mountains, but dry, sterile thunder without rain. There is not even solitude in the mountains, but red, sullen faces sneer and snarl from doors of mud-cracked houses.
If there were water and no rock, if there were rock and also water, and water, a spring, a pool among the rock.
If there were the sound of water only, not the cicada and dry grass singing, but the sound of water over a rock, where the hermit thrush sings in the pine trees.
Drip, drop, drip, drop, 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 drop.
But there is no water.
Who is the third who always walks beside you? When I count, there are only you and I together. But when I look ahead up the white road, there is always another walking beside you, gliding wrapped in a brown mantle, hooded. I do not know whether a man or a woman. But who is that on the other side of you?
is that sound high in the air? Murmur, maternal lamentation? Who are those hooded hordes swarming over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth, ringed by the flat horizon only? What is that city over the mountains? Cracks and reforms and bursts in the violet air, falling towers.
Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London.
Unreal. A woman drew back her long black hair out tight and fiddled whisper music on those strings. And bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings.
And crawled head downwards, down a blackened wall, and upside down in air were towers, tolling reminiscent bells that kept the hours, and voices singing out of empty cisterns and exhausted walls.
In this decayed hole among the mountains, in the faint moonlight, the grass is singing over the tumbled graves. About the chapel, there is the empty chapel, only the wind's home.
It has no windows, and the door swings. Dry bones can harm no one. Only a cock stood on the roof tree.
Cocorico, cocorico.
In a flash of lightning, then a damp gust, bringing rain.
Ganga was sunken, and the limp leaves waited for rain, while the black clouds gathered far distant over Himavant. The jungle crouched, humped in silence. Then spoke the thunder. Da! Da da!
What have we given? My friend, blood shaking my heart, the awful daring of a moment's surrender, which an age of prudence can never retract. By this, and this only, we have existed, which is not to be found in our obituaries.
Or in memories draped by the beneficent spider.
or under seals broken by the Linsolicito in our empty rooms. Diagram.
I have heard the key. Turn in the door once, and turn once only.
We think of the key, each in his prison. Thinking of the key, each confirms a prison.
Only at nightfall, ethereal rumors revive for a moment. A broken Coriolanus. Damyata.
The boat responded gaily to the hand expert with sail and oar.
The sea was calm. Your heart would have responded gaily when inviting, beating, obedient to controlling hands.
I sat upon the shore fishing with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lands in order?
London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down.
Questa scorsa nel poco che li affina, quando pian tu che le don. Oh, swallow, swallow, la prenta quatana tola bully. These fragments I have shored against my ruins. Well, then I'll fit you. Geronimo's mad again.
Data.
Diabam.
Damyata.
Shanti.
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 There it is.
After every episode, yeah, by the way, if we could
Well done, everybody. That's a weird one.
So, Paul, that's a fantastic question. Someone asked, "What is this?" in the Facebook comments. And what this is a collaboration of creative souls that have been stuck at home for close to 3 months, doing unique things together that inspire art and connection and improvisation. And I am just so grateful. Every one of these episodes, at least for me, brings something unique to my life and gives me something to look forward to. Not just to connect with new people like Tom and Chris. It was so great. Thank you, Pam, for arranging a fantastic ensemble. just
Thank
so
you.
all of you know, T.S. Eliot once used to talk about how April is the cruelest month. And what's funny is I can attest to that because originally I started planning this episode back in April, had it all dialed in and lined up, and then the people got sick. Then we had a backup plan, and that backup plan fell apart. And then finally, when we finally got it right, I realized that the universe knows exactly what it's doing. And the reason our first plan didn't pan out was because we were meant to do this together today, and that was really fantastic. So Tom and Chris, that was really, really cool. So I'd like to give another shout out to you guys. How did that feel for you? I know when Pam asked, this was kind of unique. When she's like, "Hey, you want to read some Eliot?" You're probably like, "What is she talking about?"
Exactly.
I mean, Chris and I do this kind of stuff all the time. So.
True. True.
So some of this, we're going to, as you know, we like to end every verse and vibe with a sing-along. And today we have actually a special treat because we're going to do 2 sing-alongs. We're going to sing along with Tom, and that's going to be fantastic. And then we're going to sing along with Bowie himself, which is probably going to get me into some sort of Facebook trouble. But guess what? In this time of trouble, we got to love one another.
Which one
I'm
am
not
I?
afraid of playing. Yes, I'm supposed to be playing this video.
Heroes.
But before we do that, Tom, really quick, I wanted to just touch base in with Spor on some of the lyrics.
Okay, good.
And some of what we just read, because the whole correlation of bringing Bowie and T.S. Eliot together came from the fact that in many, many of Bowie's lyrics, he used a lot of literary influence.
Right.
So really quickly, there might be some things that you recognized in T.S. Eliot's work that directly inspired some lyrics from Bowie. So you want to point out some of those fantastic parts, Spor, before we sing along?
I can do that, Rachel.
Thank you.
So there's one that really came to mind, and here's the funny part. Like, everyone kind of talked a little bit about how Bowie got in their life. I was probably about 10 years old when I first heard Bowie. And, I remember, I think the first album I actually heard was Diamond Dogs. It was really weird. In the beginning of that, when they have that little bit, it's the intro. It's called Future Legend. And that's in Diamond Dogs. And it's just disturbing, shrieking, post-industrial, apocalyptic sounds. I mean, it's discordant, it's disturbing. And the lyrics. And I'm going to give you one little quick thing from that. So close your eyes for a moment. And red mutant eyes gaze down on Hunger City. No more big wheels. Fleas the size of rats sucked on rats the size of cats. And 10,000 peoploids split into small tribes, coveting the highest of the sterile skyscrapers. Now here's Eliot. And fiddled whisper music on those strings, and bats with baby faces in the violet light whistled and beat their wings. So rhythm and imagery, it was just so there. And there's a lot of that, but that's one little slice.
Yeah, I highly suggest for those of you that are Bowie fans, if you've never actually specifically looked into his literary influences, you're in for a treat because you'll learn stuff that you didn't even know. He was really a prolific reader and, has a lot of literary influence that you could tie into some other poets as well. So, Tom, tell us a little bit about what we're going to hear. So, like I said, we're going to sing along twice today. As you know, at the beginning, the musicians come on this show out of their love for art. So we have their virtual tip jars posted in the comments that are also above and will be below at the end of the show. So feel free to send them a virtual drink and check out their websites. And I believe, Chris, you've got a drum school that we'll put the link to the comments in if you want to talk about that for a second. And then, Tom, you can talk about the song you're going to sing. And we'll close it out with singing live to Bowie himself.
Sure. Yeah. Rachel. Yeah. So the Seattle Drum School of Music, that's where I teach when I'm not on the road. Well, which means all the time here now. But it's basically a music school I teach at. And this is where my studio is actually located. So all the production work and writing and practicing and teaching that I do online is all conducted from right here. Been here for over 10 years. I love it. And we teach all instruments. We do everything here at the Seattle Drum School of Music, or otherwise known as the Seattle Drum School of Love. It's been it's been around for about 30 years or so. The owners are wonderful people. All the staff, all the administration, everybody's wonderful people. And it's just a very strong, well-known Seattle Institute of music. And I'm happy to be a part of that, and be a part of it here, ongoing.
That's awesome.
Awesome. We'll put the link to the website for the school in the comments as well for you.
Absolutely.
And Tom, tell us
Appreciate
about the treat we're in for right now.
You guys kind of put me on the stand here. I never cover Bowie. I learned this song this morning, and I also learned the Changes one.
Oh, you learned them both.
You guys should have told me not to learn that one. That had a lot of chords.
Yeah.
I wish you'd got me off the hook earlier, but anyway, here's a song that I've listened to 3 million times in my life. It's one of the best songs I've written. So I thought I would. I'm going to be looking at lyrics, but there's a version of Heroes. Let's do it. Why not?
Yeah, and let me put the lyrics in the comment. So the way the sing-along works at home is we're going to mute ourselves because none of you want to hear me sing. Trust me. And
don't let me sing it all because this is like the first time I've sung it live. Quote.
You're great, Tom. You got it.
Well, you know what? We actually
over to Tom. Let me give you the
we
lyrics.
did cover this in the Tiny Universe, so I sort of remember the horn parts for it.
Can you chime in?
At some point, I'll throw them in the breaks or whatever.
Yeah.
Sing along at home, and
I will be king, and you will be queen. We'll drive them away. We can't beat them just for one day. We can just for one day. You can be mean, and I stay drunk all the time, 'cause we're lovers, and that's a fact. Yes, we're lovers, and that is that. Don't together, we could steal time. One day, that we could be heroes forever and ever. What you say? Come on, put a trumpet. Like the dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together, we can't beat them, forever and ever. Oh, we can be heroes, just for one day. I can remember standing by the wall, everybody, with the guns above our heads, kissed as though nothing could fall, and the shame on the other side. Oh, we can beat them never. We can beat them just for one day. can be heroes. We can be heroes. We can be heroes. Yeah. We can be heroes. And nothing will help us. Maybe we're lying, and you better not stay. But we could be safer just for one day.
Yeah.
This here's sing along.
Nice.
That was good.
Arr.
Rachel, you're muted.
Unmute thyself.
Thank God.
Mute.
You might not want to hear me singing, and some of you might not want to hear me talking. Haha. I used to do stand-up comedy, and I would tell this joke that said, "My friends are so glad that I'm up here talking to you because that means I'm not down there talking to them." So they appreciate the break. So we picked those to Tom. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for putting
good
the
job,
effort
Tom.
into learning something
Yeah,
new.
Tom.
I'm just checking it out today. It's such a cool
tune,
tune.
and it means I think
Yeah.
the lyrics of the two songs we chose, "Heroes" being one of them, is really important because we can all step up and love each other and be heroes to each other just by being good people. So we all are heroes. So hopefully
We
we'll
can all be
continue to
safe
do
for
that work
just
in the
one
world.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Well,
just one day.
And
Now
so what
more
we're
than
gonna
ever,
do
we need
now
more
is-
heroes.
I
Yeah,
see
that's
no
better.
reason. Obviously, we've all gone through a lot of changes, so that's the song that I picked. And I miss David. I miss listening to his music. I miss looking at the pictures of his crazy outfits on stage and his camaraderie with his band. So I picked a live performance, and I'm just going to throw it up on the screen.
Nice.
And algorithms be damned.
Yes,
Right.
So
good
we're going
call.
to take a little risk, and I picked a live version, which actually is from, I'll tell you exactly where it's from in a second before I press play and share my screen. And then we'll sing along. And then if you log off, great. If hopefully
folks,
you'll
I'm
tune
Joe
in
Biden. I'd
again
like to-
next Sunday.
I'd
We have
like
a
to
very
ask you
special
to join my
episode. We're doing the
campaign.
mantras of
As
George
I've
Harrison
said, time and
with
again,
some fantastic members
we're in a battle for the soul
and
of this
people who were
nation.
connected to Harry
And that
Christians
means
back
not
in the
only
60s
defeating
and
Donald
70s
Trump,
with
but
Amy
also
Doris.
taking
So we're
big,
doing the
bold
magic
actions
of
to help
music and
Americans who are
mantras
struggling.
inspired by, it's called
it's
Here
not gonna
Comes
be
the
easy.
Sun. So next
But
Sunday
nothing
at
worth
2
fighting
o'clock
for
or
is ever
earlier,
easy.
because we're doing a
So
little
join me.
breakfast because
And
our
together
musical
we'll
guests
defeat
are coming
Donald
from
Trump and
Thailand.
transform America.
So we're going to skip the ads, which probably will play over me. So this
Okay,
is
so that was an
Changes
end of the
Live
I thought that was quickly in
from
my head.
2002. Changes Live from 2002 in Paris. And let's do it.
Still don't know what I was waiting for. And time was running wild in the dead-end streets. Every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the weight was not so deep. And I told myself to face me, never caught a glimpse how the others must see this faker. I'm much too fast to take the test. Changes. Changes. Didn't want to have to be a richer man, but changes. I just wanted to be a better man. Time may change me. I can't trace that. Watch the ripples change their sides. Never leave the stream, form a permanent sand. So the days flow through my life. The days never seem the same. And these children that they spit on as they try to change their world, they're immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. Changes. Face the strain. Changes. Don't tell them to grow up and out of it. Changes. Face the strain. Changes. Looks like they've left them up to their necks in it. Time may change me. I can trace time. Strange fascination, fascinating me. Oh, changes I'm taking, the place I'm going to changes. Face the spring. Changes. Look out all you rock and rollers. Changes. Face the spring. Changes. Pretty soon we're all gonna get older. Time may change me. I can trace time. Said the time may change me. I can trace time.
David Bowie, y'all.
Wow. David Bowie, y'all. Tom Freund, y'all.
Yes.
Chris Littlefield, y'all. Spor.
Littlefield, y'all.
Verse and Vibe. We'd like to end all of our shows with
Verse
and
and Vibe.
And I am so grateful. And again, I hope we'll see you next week for Here Comes the Sun, the magic of mantras and music, celebrating George Harrison with some fantastic history.
My gospel
And I
God.
love you guys. Over and out. Enjoy your Sunday. This is Verse and Vibe. And now I like to say
Hello,
namaste.
everyone.
And
I'm coming
good night,
directly
Joe
to you
Biden,
for
so no,
ask
you're
a
not
quick
in my
favor.
show. So we're gonna
Close
stop
that
you.
screen.
I like
Close
to say
that screen.
namaste. Namasko.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namasko.
Namaste.
Verse and Vibe. Over and out. Bye, everyone.
Cheers,
Thanks
y'all.
for tuning in. See you next week.
Cheers.
All right.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.